This is the In Focus podcast from The Hindu.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the In Focus podcast. I'm your host G. Sampath. Last month, The Hindu broke the story of 16 Indian workers trapped in prison-like conditions at a cement factory in the Libyan city of Benghazi. These workers' phones and passports were taken away, they hadn't been paid their wages for months, and they were made to work for longer hours than what was specified in their employment contract. And these workers hailing from rural Uttar Pradesh and Bihar are still waiting to return to India. So what led these young men to seek employment in a place like war-torn Libya in the first place? What is the modus operandi of the dubious recruitment agents that seem to have preyed upon these vulnerable people? What is the legal framework that regulates a manpower recruitment system in India? And what changes are needed to ensure that India's unemployed poor do not fall into such traps in the future? In this deep dive episode of In Focus, we speak to the two journalists from The Hindu who have done a detailed story on the human tragedy unleashed by this recruitment scam. We have with us Kunal Shankar and Mayank Kumar. Kunal and Mayank, welcome to In Focus. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks indeed for having us on the podcast.
Thanks, sir, for having us.
Great to have you both. So to start with, I'll begin with you, Kunal. So I was just wondering, you've been writing about this, you broke this story in December. Can you give us a quick overview of how these workers landed up in Benghazi of all places? Like, how did this happen? How did this come about?
Let me actually give you a quick backgrounder of really what set us off on this sort of exploration, if you will, Sampath. Soon after our general elections, one of the trends that emerged through the election, which was for some a surprise indeed, was that a lot of people actually voted on very basic issues. While largely several journalists had predicted that it might be a clean sweep for the BJP, it actually fell considerably short of majority. And one of the main issues that emerged was employment, or rather unemployment, right? And this was a distress noticed nationwide. But it emerged that one of the largest areas, and this should not really surprise us because we've been reporting on rural distress across major agrarian states like Uttar Pradesh, Bihar, Jharkhand, and Orissa, and other states, and West Bengal. So it ought not to really surprise us, but it emerged that unemployment in these states actually really sort of influenced voter decisions. And in areas where we had thought that the BJP would do really well, in fact, it landed up not doing so. And with this as a backdrop, we started a series of on unemployment called Joblessness in India. And Mayank, in fact, wrote a very detailed article for us at that point, talking about how for a few thousand jobs at the entry level for the police force, there were 100,000 or multiples of more than 10 times applying for those jobs. And I think Mayank can speak on those details. And another trend that emerged is that not only are Indians, particularly blue-collar workers in these states, migrating to within India, which we have known and documented for some time now, particularly the southern part of India, which is more industrialized, like Karnataka, Tamil Nadu, Telangana, and even in Kerala and other states where wages are better. But they have, in fact, been looking quite extensively at migrating to West Asia. Of course, we have known that migration has existed, but even to North Africa, like you mentioned, Libya, and in fact even Somalia. Our story, in fact, traces one person who had fled Somalia and returned back on that spotlight story that you just mentioned, who did not even know his whereabouts, and all he knew was that he was in a metal bar making factory, which never really functioned for about a year in between 2022 and 2023. So we sort of began looking at this sort of distress migratory pattern, if you will, because of joblessness, and a certain kind of tip off from people working quite at the high level within the Indian government, at the central government, sort of tipped us off about these 16 Indian workers. We should remind our listeners that they were actually 19. Three of them had sort of gotten ways to escape from there through either Indian consulate officials and in fact through a very committed social worker, Tabassum Mansoor, who actually heads a central sort of international school in Libya, in Benghazi, and has been there for over 2 decades, who's a social worker in countries where we don't have extensive consular or embassy presence. We rely a lot on social workers like so that's the large sort of broad background, if I can provide you with that. Yeah, so
Right. Thank you for that, Kunal. I appreciate you giving us a broad overview of how this entire phenomenon has sort of taken off, especially the fact about distress migration and joblessness. But I'm curious, about how widespread is this phenomenon. I mean, clearly from your story, it's evident that there are these recruitment agencies which are operating, and of course, I mean, you guys have used the term fake recruitment. I'm sure their clientele is not able to distinguish between what is fake and what is real. So, Mayank, I mean, I was just wondering, if you want to sort of explain how do these guys operate, and not to operate with this kind of impunity. I mean, don't they have to register themselves with the government, come under some sort of regulatory framework? I'm just curious, how do you make sense of how they operate?
Okay, so Sampath, just to answer your query, the first thing is that the eastern part of Uttar Pradesh, basically this Gorakhpur area, which we call as Purvanchal region of the state, and its neighboring districts of Bihar, like there is a Siwan, Gopalganj, and other districts. There is an ecosystem of sending people to Middle Eastern countries, GCC countries, North Africa. There is a whole ecosystem working. Basically, these things started in 1990s with globalization and the advancement of technology. Coming back to your query that how they are operating, the Ministry of External Affairs website has a detailed procedure for recruiting agents to get registered so that they can send workers abroad, and the government has a regulatory control over this. In the whole region which we traced, the eastern UP region of Gorakhpur Administrative Division, there are only 22 registered recruiting agents. But only in that particular locality which we trace, that in that 2 kilometer radius of Singharia area, this locality is known as Singharia near Kundra Ghat, which is just adjoining to the All India Institute of Medical Sciences in Gorakhpur. At least 25 to 30 training centers are functional. Basically, they don't claim to be recruiting agents. They have a very clear board set up claiming to give training to workers interested in work of iron building, plastering, mason, tiler, driving, and other things.
So these training centers, who runs them? Are they registered with the government? Are they government run, or are they private operators? Are they certified?
I'm just coming to that. The thing is that these training centers, many of them are registered under various skill development programs. Okay, they have certification for different skill development as skill development centers by the state government or by some organization which is which has the power to give their own private certificate to a particular person who is trained for 2 months, 4 months. So these centers have that thing that we give people training, and we have a particular skill development authorization or registration. These are their claims. But the fact of the matter is, behind these claims, they are running this whole setup of sending people abroad through fake means. Basically, most of the people who are going there to to North Africa, to GCC countries, to other Middle Eastern countries, are basically going on tourist visa. These guys take a certain amount from these people, may train them for 15 days, 30 days if they are not trained, and then send them through their agents based in these countries to work there on these tourist visa. So this whole thing is operated in that way. When I visit, we are saying that what kind of regulatory framework is there? The government SOP is very clear over this issue, that anyone who want to send people abroad must need to registered under Government of India, Ministry of External Affairs. There is a particular division. The division is known as PGE, Protectorate General of Immigrant. So this particular agency within the MEA will issue enrollment letter to anyone wanting to be agent for sending people abroad, so that the government must have a regulatory control over that. But most of these guys who are working in that particular locality have no certification of that kind. They are only saying that we are running under the skill development program. This is how this whole nexus work. uh, Time to time, government of Uttar Pradesh or government of India has issued directives to law enforcement agencies to check this kind of recruitment things, or recruitment agent or fake agent. But the fact of the matter is, there is some kind of what we can say local patronage. That's why these guys are working in impunity. There is no
By local patronage, do you mean political patronage?
uh, we can say a nexus of political patronage and administrative patronage also. Because if someone like me, who went from from Lucknow to do the story, can find these guys having questionable credentials, I will not say directly, why not the government is able to find these guys? So this is a big question mark over this.
Yeah, or clamp down on them. Yeah.
Mike, so you're saying that these guys who are operating as recruitment agents, they should have had an enrollment letter from the MEA and they are operating without it. Is that right?
Exactly. There is a procedure. This Protectorate General of Immigrant, which is PGE division under the Ministry of External Affairs, has the sole authority to issue enrollment letter to recruitment agents who want to send people abroad. This is a process by the government of India.
Right.
And there is a
So
whole
if I can
list.
add, I just wanted to add here one point, Sampath. An important point here that actually Mayank sort of already mentioned. There are what are called testing centers, which come under the National Skill Development Corporation, which is under the National Skill Development Ministry. And these testing and certification centers are supposedly, a sort of a government authorized official place where you can procure a certification in any kind of a skill, right? Like, for instance, electrician or plumbing or etc. And that certification is supposed to enable you to be able to have it as interoperable with countries that India has MOUs with, where you can then apply for jobs. So this is one nuance that needs to be brought in. And what happens at this center, from what Mayank has been able to find out, is that there are various people there who are in the guise of recruitment agents who sort of lure aspirants away from this process by saying that they can circumvent it and instead find ways to get these jobs easier and without having to get the certification, etc., for which one has to actually upfront pay money. So there's an important aspect there, which is the financial aspect, which needs to be sort of underscored, which aspirants are unsure whether they will get back or not through the certification process. Mayank, I hope that was something that you added to what you were going to say.
Right, definitely. This is a fact that the financial angle here is very big. All these guys who are going to these countries are from low income families, rural low income families, and the only way they think that they can get the upward social mobility and the financial mobility is through these means. When I visited these guys who are trapped there, someone's elder brother has had worked maybe in Saudi Arabia 15 years back. Someone's father had worked in any other country 25 years back. So this thing is, it is not that it is happening for the first time. The
Right. So
thing is that it
in
is
this context, Mike, I just want to sort of ask you something. So, is this kind of being lured into working like prison-like conditions in a place like Libya? Is this part of a wider phenomenon which applies to other GCC countries? Because, as you said, people, I mean, rurally, economically vulnerable people from these rural parts of Eastern UP and Bihar, if they have been going to Saudi Arabia and Bahrain and Qatar and all these places, have they been going to these places also on a tourist visa and being exploited, or are they following the more legit route to these countries? But to Libya, they've been sort of lured into this illegal route where tourist visa is sort of brought in, and then they're not able to get their dues in terms of respect for the employment contract, etc., etc.
no,
Is this
no,
the
no.
same, or is Libya different?
No, it is same. It is same in most of the instances. Even in Saudi Arabia, even in Bahrain, Qatar, or other countries, the modus operandi seems to be the same. The Many of the guys, few people may have gone through the working visa, but many of the people who are from the vulnerable social group or economic group, they are they have gone to these countries on tourist visa.
So
This is a
is
fact.
there some kind of like a class stratification, like the blue collar workers go on this tourist visa, get exploited, and the white collar workers to these Gulf countries go on a working visa and they're okay? Is that like a pattern or something?
Yeah, it seems a pattern because when we talk to these people who are trapped, as I had told you that in most of these guys, some family member had previously visited Saudi Arabia, some has visited Bahrain or any other place, and they had also gone on a tourist visa. So this is a pattern. The thing here is that what is promised to these guys, be it in Saudi Arabia, be it in Qatar, because one thing that has came in notice is that what is promised to these guys, even in other countries, are not delivered fully. Like even the wages which is promised to them, it is not delivered in that way, because once you are in that particular country uh, with fake documents basically, then the employer
Fake
has
document?
a,
What document is fake?
like the way no one has a, if someone is going on a tourist visa, they don't have the right to work under in that
So
country
basically, they're
under
going there without the right document, without documents, basically. When
Right. Yeah.
yeah,
Right. Yeah.
yeah.
It's not fake. It's not the right document, and that right. And they aren't they just don't have the ability to decipher between what is the right document and what is not. Right. they solely rely on these employment or fake recruitment agents. And as Mayank was saying, there is an e-migrate site which actually hosts the licensed recruitment agencies, which allow you to migrate safely and legally, as they call it. And they have something called an immigration certificate requirement for particularly 18 countries where a lot of this exploitation is very rampant. And the Gulf Cooperation Council countries are actually do form part of them. So if I can come in and also mention here, Sampath, one of the questions asked in the Lok Sabha to the External Affairs Ministry on the 26th of July 2024 was the number of people employed, since we were talking about, particularly in West Asia. And the question that you asked, whether there's a sort of a class or a tier system of blue collar and white collar employment. So the ministry responded. The answer by the Minister of State for External Affairs, Kirtivartan Singh, he said a large number of skilled, semi-skilled, and unskilled laborers from India are employed across the West Asian countries of Bahrain, Kuwait, Oman, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates, the maximum of which are in UAE with 35.5 lakh people there, then followed by that with Saudi Arabia, where there are more than 26 lakh, and then Qatar, where there are about 8 lakhs.
So
All
are
of
these
these
35 lakh people, are they on tourist visa working there and getting exploited, or are they there on work visas?
So they range from those who have been there on tourist visas. Some then get converted into these numbers are the legal migration numbers that the minister had provided. So they are not the fake recruitment agency route, right? They are according to the minister, there are about a total of 92 lakh 58,302, to give you the exact figure. And they are working in sectors like construction, oil and gas, food and beverage, domestic help, housekeeping, warehousing and logistics, but also at a higher level order of healthcare, engineering, IT, finance, etc., and at port management and transport. So there is an entire range. But this is largely tracking who are those that have gone as legal migrants. So, but but the government claims that there is a robust mechanism of monitoring their working conditions and grievance redressal, etc. But there have constantly been reports of, as Mike pointed out, of reneging on promises assured, on reneging on conditions assured, and often even not reporting basic stuff like death or
Right.
injury
No,
or
Kunal,
illnesses,
just
etc.
sorry to interrupt, but just coming back to the score, the main story of this podcast, which is like, I mean, I wanted to ask you, how is it that these workers were able to go to Libya at a time when India had a travel ban, so to speak, on go traveling to Libya after 2016, right? I mean, how were they able to go there in the first place when there's a travel ban from India?
Right. So, travel to Libya for work. So, India and Libya actually share a rather long diplomatic relationship. We opened our diplomatic mission there in 1969. And in fact, the Tunisian embassy, which right now handles Libyan relations, of course, very recently the Libyan embassy has been reopened in Tripoli. But one of the things that they specifically mention is the warm sort of relationship that Libya and India has established, and late Prime Minister Indira Gandhi visited in 1984. And there has been a long-standing sort of migration to Libya, particularly of blue-collar workers, for decades. And in fact, the 2019 communique, when the Indian government decided to sort of issue the travel ban that you mentioned, even says that despite this, there are about 4,000 Indian nationals who are still working in Libya. And this is despite, I'm actually just looking at their circular right now. This is despite the fact that the government has issued all these warnings of not having to work there. And most of those who have been there have actually gone there through this route of you know, a recruitment agent who then brings you to a GCC country, like this Abu Bakr in our case, who's a Libyan national, who brought these 16 Indians, all of them through Dubai, where he gets them on a tourist visa, and then he enables another tourist visa from Libya for their travel to an end site of work, which is in this case the Libyan cement factory, which, according to their own website, is actually the largest cement manufacturer of that country. So, to what extent the final employer is cognizant of the whole process of employment that is being enabled, we are unsure just yet. Because we've not been able to speak to the cement factory owners or management ourselves. What we know is the distress and, like you pointed out, the prison like situation that they're working under over there, that the workers have told us and have reached out to the Indian embassy asking for help and particularly seeking repatriation.
Right. Thank you for that explanation, Kunal. I mean, it is, of course, a very tortuous journey from Gorakhpur to Dubai. From Dubai, you take a tourist visa, all that. I was just wondering, as part of this reportage for this spotlight story, I mean, I think, Mayank, you went, as in you posed as an aspirant who wants to go and work in one of these countries yourself, and then you went and interacted with that persona. So how was that like? I mean, and I also understand that some of these young men were supporters of the BJP and so on and so forth. So like, what was the actual interaction with these workers, their families like, with these agents in particular? I just want to know if you can give our listeners a flavor of the actual reportage that went into this from the ground.
Yeah, so I went to the centers after visiting the family in the interior parts of Gorakhpur and Kushinagar. I then went to the centers, which is in the main town of Gorakhpur. So when I try to talk to them to get the how they manage these things and how they will take someone to these countries. So these centers outrightly promise that, mm, um, as I told them, that I need a job immediately because there is a crisis I am going through, and I need financial support for that, and I need to go there, and I am ready to pay anything if they can just facilitate my movement. So they were upfront. They told they were clear that they can offer me a very decent job in GCC countries or any other Middle Eastern country.
Like, what did you
Uh,
tell them in terms of your skill set? Did you tell them you are a plumber or welder or you are totally unskilled? Like what did you offer them?
as I visited 4 or 5 centers, so I tested them. In few centers, I tested them that I am very unskilled. I don't know any skill, and you have to first train me, then make me able to travel there. In that also, they were very clear that we can train you within 15 days, and it will not be a big work as iron belting or maybe working as a tiler or working as a carpenter will be easy, and you will just learn the skill within 15 to 30 days. And the interview, or what we can say as the skill test, is not that tough that will be difficult for you to crack. So they just offered me. They what they were wanting was money. This is very clear that they had a kind of deal with the facilitators, and they what they wanted was they are ready to um,
Like, how much
get
money
me.
did they want from you, and what did they say that you could earn there?
Roughly, I think it varied. It varied between 20,000 to 1 lakh. Like if someone is fully unskilled, they need to train that person, and thereafter that person need to be sent. Then the amount is roughly around 60,000 to 1 lakh rupee. depending on the salary that will be offered. Uh, and if someone is trained, like someone knows how to do the work of a tiler or work of an iron welder, in that case the amount they demand from a person is bit low. It varies from 10,000 to 40,000. In case of if someone is going there, the general offer these guys make is anywhere between 35,000 Indian rupee to 60,000 Indian rupee monthly. A person will get this salary if he's going to any of these countries.
And if
So
these
the
guys who are going there for 35,000 to 50,000, if they were to get an equivalent job in India or in Gorakhpur, like how much would they be earning? How much would they be
uh,
paid by an Indian employer, approximately, from what you know of the situation there?
600 rupee generally in Gorakhpur or in the neighboring district. Anyone who is working there earns daily. This is the standard rate in the unorganized sector. Uh, 600, 500 to 600 rupee.
And this is for somebody
Uh,
who has already got the certification and all that. I mean, who is
no,
actually
no.
a, hmm.
Yeah. I'm coming to that. The thing is that this certification, which Kunal mentioned regarding the skill development program, these are very easy certifications. It is not a very big task for anyone who is fully unskilled. So many of the guys who are working in Gorakhpur or Kushinagar or the adjoining districts, many of them have these kind of certification from the skill development um, departments or organizations. And if that particular person is working in Gorakhpur or other parts, adjoining areas, he will get 500 to 600 rupee daily working here. So what I get to know from these things is that there is not a major difference, because for example, if someone is earning 50,000 there, uh, his living expenses is also, when I talk to these guys um, who are trapped, and his brother or father has previously worked there, they told me that what they earn or they can earn in Gorakhpur is the same amount that they are able to send back. Like if someone is earning 50,000 in Dubai or Qatar, he is able to send his family only 25,000 or 20,000 Indian rupee in remittance. And if he's working here, he will at least save 12,000 to 15,000 rupee, because the living cost in their villages is quite low in compared to that living cost there. So the most of these guys, they are very much depressed by the fact that they didn't had any kind of job opportunity back home, and this is the only reason that they are going abroad. Many of these guys told me that if their son could have earned even 12,000 or 14,000 in Gorakhpur, uh, he would have never went there, because the fact of the matter is, um, in villages there is no job for them. This was their version, that even it's difficult to get a 15,000 rupee job in village or in their uh, adjoining city.
Right. So it's pretty clear from what you're saying, Mayank, that no, there is extreme distress, financial distress due to lack of employment opportunities. Now, can you talk a little bit about what you found about the relationship between these individuals, their families, and their political choices? Because Gorakhpur, as we know, is the district of is the constituency of the chief minister, and it's and then there is the incumbent is back in election after election, so they must have certain expectations from the government. And how does that tally with their continual distress?
Yeah, so that's a very interesting thing. Kunal is also aware of that. That when one of the guys' father is a senior BJP, the ruling party worker.
One of the guys, you
He
mean one of the guys who is stuck in Benghazi?
yeah, Benghazi is his father. Yeah,
Okay.
his father is a senior BJP worker, and he is a booth level president, which is the lowest hierarchy in the ruling party's ecosystem. He is that booth level president, means he's a village. He's similar to a village president of the ruling party. So that guy's father, who has been associated with the ruling party since the Ram Mandir movement, which is the first major inroad or the movement through which the ruling party emerged in the state or in that particular region of Gorakhpur. So he was associated with the BJP. He is associated with the BJP since that time. When he started, when his son was in very bad shape and he was depressed and the family was in anxiety, they contacted the leaders for help. So what has happened that the Gorakhpur district has two parliamentary constituencies. One constituency is the Gorakhpur and the other is a neighboring constituency, which whose MP is the union minister also. So that particular guy's father went to meet the minister, and he wrote a letter to the Minister of External Affairs in the Union of India. So that was one thing. The second thing was very interesting. Is his father, as a senior BJP worker, tried to meet the chief minister, and in a bid to meet the chief minister, he contacted a few people asking that as the CM comes weekly to Gorakhpur, at least spend a day or two every week in Gorakhpur, he will like to have an interaction with the CM over this issue. What was shocking for the father was that he was asked some kind of bribe to facilitate the appointment. So it was a bit shocking when we had an interaction, maybe off the record interaction with the father. Uh, he was very upset over this issue. Um, because he didn't expected this to happen. Uh, at least these guys, his father or the family, was expecting that those who want to facilitate the movement should do a minimum to have him here, and action as per the law or as per the government mechanism need to be taken. But contrary to that, they had to he was asked for a bribe. It was a kind of a bribe ask to facilitate the movement.
So, Mayank, I mean, it was great to listen to this, the story of this family, whose, the worker is in Libya. The father wants some help from the party, with which he has been associated for a long time. He's part of the Ram Temple movement. And when he wants to meet the chief minister and some functionary wants a bribe, I'm assuming he must have been really, really, shocked, taken aback. How did that affect his relationship with the party? Man, was he like, thinking, okay, I'm not going to vote for you guys next time? Or like, what was the response?
Yeah, so one correction there, that he was on record
Okay,
telling these
whatever he
things
said
to
to you
us.
was on record.
Yeah, he was
Okay.
on record telling us this thing. And when he approached a particular guy, he was
His name is
naming.
Ramesh Vishwakarma. We should also probably, since we're speaking extensively about him, his name is Ramesh Vishwakarma, and he's had a welding machine, a welding shop for many, decades, and this traditional family occupation in
So
one of the
Ramesh
villages
Vishwakarma is
within
the name
the.
of the father?
Yeah,
And yes,
yeah.
and his son Mithilesh Vishwakarma, who is an aspiring athlete, is the one who's trapped in Libya.
Okay, okay, okay.
So when he approached the particular person in the BJP, for at least a hearing with the state CM. He was asked a bribe. Uh, for that person who has given more than 3.5 decades for the ruling party, it was a shocker, uh, that how this can happen. What they were expecting at a bare minimum to for the from the government and from the party to facilitate their son movement from Libya to India. And for that also, when he was asked for such a thing, it was depressing for them, it was annoying for them. But one thing I really thought, that despite that, he was thinking that at least the mm, some good things are happening, so that he will not switch to any other political formation. But yes, he was totally frustrated with the what has asked to him, what was the way the bribe was asked to him, because he was very clear when we were talking that they were not expecting anything else. What they were wanting is the son back. He was in a dire need, and in that case also, when he is asked for such a thing, it is unacceptable for them. That was very clear from the family. um, uh, that's it.
Right, unacceptable, but no political consequences to follow for for the party in question. Now, Kunal, is there anything you wanted to add to this entire phenomenon in terms of uh, what happened on the ground? These are people committed to this regime in power, but then there has been failure on two fronts from the government. One, of course, failure to enforce the law or the regulatory framework for these fake recruitment agencies. Secondly, when one of them approaches them directly for some kind of a help in getting their child or son back, there is no response to that either. There is no nothing evident in terms of what they've done to make sure that these laborers, these workers, don't fall prey to these kinds of rackets and end up going. Okay, you may end up going to Qatar, Saudi Arabia. That's one thing, but then going to a war-torn country where which is it's a completely different matter. Like, how do you situate these Indian blue collar workers going everywhere, getting exploited, and then getting stuck? Like, where do they fit in this whole labor flows across this region from India to West Asia, North Africa, Somalia?
And in fact, we should not forget that they have also been to work at the Israeli army, at the Russian army, at the Ukraine army. I mean, in the defense forces, as the wars over there have been progressing. That also tells us the kind of distress that a lot of Indians are in terms of employment and income generation. And I mean, in terms of real-time consequences that you asked for the government in power, as Mayank pointed out, it's a rather complex relationship that they seem to share with the ruling party. At one level, several of them do agree with a sort of a rather a Hindu majoritarian ideology that the party professes, and are wedded to it and have even worked towards it. But at another level,
One
when
second,
it comes
Kunal.
to
Sorry to stop you. I just wanted to ask one question to Mayank, which just came to me because you spoke about the Hindu majoritarian ideology. Mayank, in the course of your conversations with these families and in the context of their interaction and experience, trying to get their son back, trying to meet the UP CM and so on, did you ever point out to them, or did it ever come up that all their children are going to uh, majority Islam countries, countries where the official religion is Islam? They're all Islamic countries. Did it ever strike them as a contradiction in some way?
When I asked them that, the one thing it was very clear for them is that uh, the distress is so big that they are willing to go to any country, what may. This was very clear to them. The whole idea of ideology, or whole idea of hating a particular uh, kind of religion was not at all, or maybe making a distance from these particular countries was not a issue for them. The only thing was for them was that they are getting a decent salary, or the expectation is that they will get a upward economic mobility. This was only the consideration for them.
It
This
was not
whole
a
issue of,
consideration. It was not a consideration. Obviously, I'm assuming it's not, but it's worth sort of flagging it that the places where they're going to work, all their bosses are going to be from the same community, which they probably don't particularly like in India.
yes, it's an interesting contradiction, but um, uh, they didn't had any choices. This is very clear that uh, they have adjusted to the reality that when they are working in Middle Eastern country, or African countries, North African country, then they have to accept the reality. So they have adjusted to it, and they were okay with it.
Right. So, Kunal, you were, I mean, I interrupted you when you were making a point about these labor flows.
Yeah, so I mean, I think that I think Mayank really put it there quite well. This is an introduction, an interesting contradiction, as you rightly pointed out. Sampath. It's not even just, and I suppose the distinction is that what they demand is at home, and what they cannot control is what's happening abroad, and those nations are, their own sovereign nations. It'll be interesting to actually talk a little bit more in detail to them with them on this, but. I would like to highlight one thing through this our process of reporting. A few positive things have also emerged. Um, Soon after we reported, the MEA, Ministry of External Affairs, acknowledged this to be an issue of these 16 workers being trapped, and being trapped for months together, and that they have reached out. So in their weekly briefing, Randhir Jaiswal, spoke about it and acknowledged it to a question from the Hindu. And within weeks after that, we reported the story on the 19th of December. On the 31st of December last year, which is 2024, these workers were moved out of that cement factory, and we spoke to them right after that, and they said that initially they were told that they were being taken out for a medical checkup, and they were all, sort of hustled into a bus with all their belongings. So they were a little unsure, because they've begun to not trust the so-called contractor, whom they call this Libyan national Abu Bakr. So they seem to have been taken out of there, and they're now. And we did a video call with them. I did a video call with the workers, and they showed me exactly where they are. It's behind the compound of this contractor's residence, in sort of two rooms where they are. But the Indian consulate, the Indian embassy officials have come and seen them. They have been in touch. In fact, Libyan police have come and seen them, and they've sort of assured them that they would be provided safety, food, and water. And the Indian government, the Indian officials have promised them that they'd be expedited at the earliest. Initially, they had said that they would be requiring what are called exit cards, which apparently is required if you do not have valid visa documents for Libya to be repatriated back to your country, to your home country. So just this morning, I actually had word with this Rajesh Mani, who runs this non-profit called Manav Seva Sansthan from Gorakhpur, who's been assisting these families. He had written to the Ministry of External Affairs, and they have replied, saying that what remains is their repatriation, and that even their paperwork is done. Let me actually just read out the email, and this is really this is really rather fresh news. And we sort of followed it up with the workers there, and the workers have been told that their flight tickets have been bought apparently for the 28th of January. So we can maybe safely claim impact of the work that we've done. The embassy official from the MEA, Bibhuti Nath Pandey, has responded saying, our embassy representatives in Benghazi has informed that flight booking of 16 Indian nationals stuck in Benghazi, Libya is under process. They're expected to return shortly. This was to an email sent by, as I told you, this Rajesh Mani, who emailed him just yesterday asking for the latest update on this issue. So yeah,
Right. I mean, that's
some
amazing.
positive development.
That's really fantastic news, Kunal. This is definitely a very positive outcome, especially the Hindu stories having an impact. And hopefully, all these laborers will be back home by 28th, as you said, if that is the date of booking. And I think reunited with their families. And hopefully, they wouldn't want to go back and look to these kinds of very dangerous opportunities in the Middle East. But on that note, Kunal and also Mayank, both of you can probably have your final responses. What needs to change so that the poor youth of Uttar Pradesh and Bihar don't fall into these kinds of traps? Now that they will be back, is there any kind of an opportunity awaiting them, or are they again going to be struggling, looking for some kind of out, out as in some kind of an employment opportunity outside the country, or is there something that they can actually legitimately aim for and probably get within, if not in Gorakhpur, maybe somewhere else in India? Like, how do you ensure that this phenomenon doesn't continue and there is an end to this?
Uh,
Yeah,
what
Mayank,
I
you want to
feel
go
is
first?
that,
Maybe Kunal maybe can have the last word.
yeah, the only one-stop solution to this whole problem is to at least is to give any kind of job security to these laborers or these poor people, or what we can say that at least give them a minimum living wage kind of thing. Because no one is going there. What I had previously also told you, that no one is expecting to get 1 lakh rupee or 2 lakh rupee there. What for? They're going just for a minimum living wage in these countries. So if we are able to, in any way, the government system is able to provide them at least a minimum living wage of 12,000 or 15,000 rupee monthly in the hometowns or in adjoining cities, no one will go to these places, because the working condition or work culture is totally different there. What one of the worker told me, that they were even beaten there in Benghazi. The flashpoint of them uh, having a dispute, and they even stopped working there in that cement factory, was that they were asked to work overtime, even in nights. And when they protested, they were beaten by the employer, by the contractors. So no one really wants to leave their homeland or leave their places. So I feel that there need to be a mechanism, at least to have at least gives the workers, uh, the government is training them under the skill development program and other things. At least make sure through the um, different private companies or organized sector enterprises, to at least give them a minimum living wage.
But Mayank,
If we are,
is the issue the quantum of compensation? Is it that they are not getting enough of a wage that is driving them, or is it that they're not getting a job in the first place? I mean, there's one thing to have a job, and the job being poorly paid is one thing, but to not have any job at all means
yeah,
you're not
yeah,
even going to get
yeah.
less than minimum wage, right?
I definitely agree to you with you. The last year, when the Israeli recruitment drive started in Lucknow, I had visited that place also. When the Israeli companies came to Lucknow to recruit these same kind of workers, uh, and the workers were very clear that we don't have any kind of job. If a youth in his early 20s or mid 20 is not getting any kind of employment, he thinks that he is a very big liability on his family. And that really forces that youth to look for avenues through dubious means, invalid means. It led to a big trap, which we saw in this episode of Libya. So I think the reason I am talking about this minimum wage is that at least government need to make sure that the youths, if they are training them, at least they are able to get an employment, and that employment need to be a minimum living wage employment. So
Right.
that's the only way ahead.
Right. I mean,
Uh,
first of all, make sure that they get jobs, and secondly, those jobs should give them at least a minimum wage. These are pretty tall asks from the government. Kunal, what are your final thoughts on this entire episode?
Yeah, first I wanted to apologize if there's been a lot of baby crying. This is a hazard of working from home when we do a lot of these recordings. I think one of the things that does need to be addressed quite urgently is the fixing the National Skill Development Corporation's framework of certification and employment abroad in the first place. And this is in particular for blue collar work. It's not it when we talk about say highly skilled workers who go to the US or other countries through in the tech sector or even in healthcare and other sectors. This licensing is not quite an issue because they are done through a sort of a university level education system, which is recognized, mutually recognized in different countries. So if there's a sort of say a graduation that an engineer has done here and he gets a master's in the US, or even over here, there's even direct recruitment that happens from India. But when it comes to these sort of jobs, right, tilers, masons in the construction industry, electricians and plumbers, there seems to be a sort of a vacuum of this sort of mutual understanding or agreement of what is considered standard practice or standard skill base. And India needs to really work on developing MOUs directly with countries and not go through third-party vendors that provide this through skill development corporation, requiring certification, all of which makes it a very convoluted process and very rife for exploitation. I think this is an important aspect which we have really noticed through this story itself. And I think the other is more systemic, which Mayim pointed to, which is how do you really sort of rev up or bring about employment in the agriculture sector and allied activities, and something that is also more meaningful, that ensures that traditional farming families and families that have dependent on sectors that are attached to farming actually stay back. And this goes to the heart of really a systemic, deep going transformation of the rural sector itself. So I think that there are two-pronged approaches that I would say that is urgently required.
Right. I mean, two very good points. Appreciate that, Kunal. Of course, one you said specifically, there is a need to streamline this entire framework under the National Skill Development Corporation, wherein the certification process and how that leads into employment opportunities abroad. That needs to be properly streamlined and there should be perhaps more transparency so that the workers don't have to go through different agents and pass through multiple hoops, pay money, all those kinds of confusion and exploitation is sort of ruled out. That is one. And secondly, of course, uh, you pointed out to the systemic or structural issues in terms of generating employment, absorbing the excess labor force, which is not absorbed into agriculture and allied activities. Of course, right now, I mean, one doesn't see any other sector taking in this employment pressure other than construction. And construction, as we know, is not something which gives even minimum wage, nor is it an avenue for upward social mobility. So that's where we stand with regard to these workers from the rural parts of Uttar Pradesh, Bihar. I mean, there are not many avenues open to them within the country, and whatever avenues they're able to sort of reach out to outside have proven to be complete traps and dangerous ones too. Hopefully, I think as people talk about this, maybe awareness will rise, and at least we will have a situation where workers and from these backgrounds do not at least end up going to war-torn countries in their desperate search for employment. Thank you so much, Kunal. Thank you, Mayank. It was really a great talking to you. Very illuminating conversation. Pleasure talking to you both. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
In Focus will be back soon with analysis of the biggest news issues. In the meantime, you can find our podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, and other platforms. Just search for In Focus by The Hindu. We'll see you soon.